Hi, thanks for coming here. My great pleasure to introduce Scott Cassell, who I met earlier this month at the annual Personal Submersibles Convention in Castine, Maine, and quite interested to hear what he said there, and thought why not invite him over here to explain more about what he's doing in the field of oceanography and research and exploring underwater. Scott.
Thanks. Okay. Thanks. Can you hear me okay? Can you guys hear me okay? I don't have a loud voice, so I need mechanical help. My name is Scott Cassell, and I'm a squid nerd. I pretty much have spent my life studying giant squid and giant Humboldt squid, and I actually think I have the best job in the world. In my office, I think, as much as I love this place, I kind of think my office is kind of cool, maybe even better than here. Most of the time, I check into my office around 50, 60 feet below the water, and or as a diver, or up to 1,000 feet deep in submersibles. So I'm having a pretty good time. Basically, what I was asked to talk about was giant squid and a program that we're working on right now called the Undersea Voyager Project. And we're going to cover kind of both of that. But first, I just want to let you know that there are alien life species here on the planet, and that's what I get to study. And you guys are going to see some footage that has never been released before. There are some documentaries that are pending that are going to have this information in it, but you guys are the first real audience to actually see the inside workings of a giant squid while it's alive. So anyway, the show that I put together for you is called The Giant Squid and the Mouse. And it's kind of a fun story because I like mice. We actually have some rats, but I also love squid. And the reasoning is also twofold. Oh, is my, can you make me work?
Click on this when you're going, and then when I need to come over here, I will. So as you talk, just click the forward button, and when I need to come over, I will.
Which one's the forward button?
Yeah.
The one on the right.
Okay, so. Well, basically, the question is it possible for a group of kids in any third world country or first world country to actually watch a giant squid in real time? The answer is yes. And can that class talk to their teacher while they're inside the submersible at 1,000 feet deep and basically have an undersea classroom? The answer is absolutely yes. And that's part of the program of the Undersea Voyager Project. This is my office. This is actually me earlier this year holding a 150-pound Humboldt squid, which scientists will tell you do not actually get this big. I have held animals even bigger than that, but it's funny, I don't have a lot of people in the water with me with cameras most of the time. I do work alone most of the time, but you can actually see that what I'm wearing here is steel body armor. It's a chainmail suit, but it's also, I have panels that I usually wear on my wrist, and on my back generally is a mixed gas rebreather system, because like you guys, I like to go to work and stay there until I get the job done. I often spend 6-7 hours underwater at a given time. So, but this squid right here, I'm taking what they call calcium isotope tissue samples, and what we're basically trying to figure out is what makes this guy relaxed, what makes this guy stressed. And we're finding out that the more we learn about the animal's physiology, the less we actually know how the darn things live. It's an amazing animal. They actually have blue blood, a cyanin-based blood. They have 3 hearts, and they have communication that takes place on the surface of their skin. They have 1.2 million chromatophores that cover the body, but amazingly, every single chromatophore, which is a cell that opens and closes with the color pigment underneath it, is wired directly to the brain individually. So the animal thinks his color. It bypasses the central nervous system, which in itself is a fascinating structure. But they also got some other cool anatomy structures that we're going to cover, including about 50,000 teeth.
What depth are you at here?
I'm only at about 50 feet deep here. Well, I kind of enticed them up. But basically what I'm doing is I'm live catching animals in the water so that they're actually attacking me, and I take a tissue sample so that we can check the calcium isotope level. And if you want to, the shortened version of that is we all have calcium, which is a mineral, it's a metal. inside of our bodies, but it's also, there's a biological version of it synthesized. And when it comes in contact with different types of hormones, it breaks down at a different rate, therefore has a different radioactive signature. And so we're trying to determine is what stresses these guys out versus when are they not stressed out, in other words, in a hunting mode. When they're hunting, they're actually probably enjoying themselves quite a bit because they're very ferocious creatures. So I've spent a little over a decade actually researching these animals. And this is a picture of me getting ready to go into work. This is actually an animal that we just released after putting under anesthesia. I kind of babysit them and cradle them before we actually re-release them back into the wild. But we've had a myriad of people come out with us. Oddly enough, I have very few people that come back for more than one trip. The squid do scare a lot of people. We actually, I was diving down with one crew from a magazine, and this underwater photographer that was diving with me, that was doing this article about me and my work, was like, wow, this is great. Well, look, Scott, I've just dove with great white sharks and tiger sharks, and I've pet a moray eel, and these squid aren't going to scare me. And so I put him up in my armor, and we cable on down to the bottom of our cables. And he's sitting down there, and he's like, okay, this is cool. I'm all right. The first 5-foot squid comes out of the dark and just like does a flinch at him like this. And I was like, wow, that was really great behavior. And I look around, he's gone. And I look up, and there I see these people, he's splashing up on the surf. I was like, oh, crap. So I dog paddle on up there, and I'm saying, you know, I get to the surface, and he's like, shh, quiet, quiet, because his boss is in the boat. And I'm in a little punga. And he's like, dude, I'm really sorry. That squid, it totally freaked me out. I said, why? He goes, I'm scared of spiders. And when that thing came at me, it looked like a giant 5-foot across spider. It just totally terrified me. So I got him down there, and he was just hanging on my arm, and I actually had more wounds from him than the squid that died.
Is that why you're wearing the wristbands?
Yeah. This is another story. So yeah, but the first we're going to talk about the anatomy of these squid. And the anatomy is its own fascination, really. First of all, the animals themselves look kind of crazy. Remind you, this is a mollusk. And the eye from this mollusk is equal in visual acuity as ours. And I bought this one from a fisherman. And they got a beak, of course, and they got a radula, which is a spike-covered tongue. And the beak and the radula are subject to some investigation right now through engineering components because of its amazing strength, even though it's flexible. Here it is being actually used against the lens of my camera being attacked. But it's a polysaccharide, this chitinous ring teeth, that the beak is made out of, as well as all the suction cups, and they all have teeth. Every suction cup is lined between 21 and 36 teeth. So if you add them all up, there's 36 to 50,000 teeth, and there they are actually deployed on the camera. Chromatophores are fun because, as you see, the animals change colors at 1/30th of a second. One frame of film, they can change colors, and they use it to communicate. Red being the first color to disappear is the side they use if they want to hide. So he's flashing red on my side, trying to be disappeared, while he's looking at the downrange. He's trying to be white, which is a nice color to hide against in the silhouette in the sky. So they can change. It's called hemispherical shading. They can change this, as you can see, in the flash of an eye. And you can clearly see the delineation between red and white. Nuchal cartilage is really cool stuff. This is the spinal cord or spinal column of a squid. And this right here is the side locks. The rail and system actually locks themselves. The head will lock itself in place. And as you can see, they're also very much cannibals. And this animal grabbed onto an animal on a jig and cut through his head in about 20 seconds, which is as big around as a human leg. These are 7-footers, 100-plus pound squids that are tearing a 5-foot squid apart right in front of me. The ink is kind of cool. People think that they use ink only when they're scared. That's not true. They actually use it to hide prey from each other, so there's less competition for food. And you can see this guy right here is actually eating another squid, and he's covering him up in the ink so nobody else can see it. So if you find yourself in the ink, you're actually going to get hit by the other squid. This ink is called a pseudomorph, and it's a gelatinous ink that actually resembles another squid. Here's a cannibal going to go eat that other squid, which is actually a pseudomorphic ink structure. And they got good eyes, and it faked him out right up to the end where he attacked it. These animals are scary smart. This animal's on a jig, and he's trying to flee a cannibal. And to get away from the cannibal, he hides right behind me. And so you can actually see the chitinous ring teeth scars on his skin. I released him. I tried to release all of our squid undamaged, and he hung out there for a long time. This is what a 200-pound squid looks like. This animal is too big around to put your hands around. And he's so big that he knows he's in charge. And so he just ripped the back of a 5-foot squid off. And he's hanging out, and I'm a dinner and a show. You know, he's watching me while he's macking down on his buddy. And he's so big that he pushes me on the shoulder like a bully, and leaves a chainmail mark on his flank right there. You can see that just by pushing me out of the way. And he continued to do it. So he's just shoving me right out of the way here and eating his little buddy. And when you come in contact with an animal this big, you really know who's in charge. They're magnificent and beautiful creatures. And by the way, the cannibalism, I don't entice that. It just happens all the time. These animals got a very similar metabolic rate as a hummingbird. These animals have an amazing growth rate of 2 millimeters a day on the average. That's a 6-foot squid, and that's an 8-footer right there. And they're just magnificent. This is what it looks like to be attacked in a group. When you're by yourself, which is a bad place to be. I'm a very steady camera, but you see I'm getting knocked around. Because for every camera that's in frame that's attacking me, there's 3 or 4 others hitting my back, head, and legs. And you can see they actually don't stop very easily. They just like keep coming in. And remember, they're completely safe, and I wish we had audio right now because the sounds that you're hearing are pretty fantastic. I actually had one grab me on the head and pulled me upside down, which is what kind of turned dark there. So these animals really are magnificent to come in contact with, but don't go diving with them in a Speedo. It's a bad idea. I encourage people to come out and dive with me. I take just about anybody who's a diver that has some skill level to come and see the animals. I do put you in chainmail armor. I do teach you how to dive on the end of a cable. And I do tell you it's going to be like getting attacked by really big pit bulls that are pissed. And as long as you got the mindset to do that, it's okay. You know.
Where are they?
Oh, I'm actually here in California now. They're all... the highest concentration that I've found in regular bases in the Sea of Cortez. And so I actually go in Santa Rosalia and dive with them out there. So they're great fun, and I've never seen the same thing twice on a dive. Sometimes they're just all out attacking. Other times they're extremely well-mannered and delicate and just a complete wonderful time with them. But since you don't know, you better go in prepared for the downside of the encounter, and that means full armor and a cable and everything. So, yes, sir?
How do you behave when they attack you?
I don't try to hurt them back. I'm a guest. So I endure the attack and try to get them off of me before they can hurt me. I actually do have scars on my arm that's occurred right through the chainmail suit. They can break your wrist in a heartbeat if it gets in the beak. The beak of a 6-foot squid is as big as your hand. And the pressure on that we're just now testing it, and we're finding out it's pretty strong. It's strong enough to break both bones in your wrist in 1 or 2 seconds of a bite. So the biggest danger you have is allowing them to get a hold of your arm or your fingers. But as long as you keep your fist and keep your hands in close, you're relatively safe. So, but I have had one pull my shoulder out of the socket. I have had one drag me down so fast that my right eardrum ruptured. And I do have scars on my throat from the ring teeth. So, you know, as long as you're armored and ready and you got a cable on you, it's no big deal. You know, it's just a lot of fun to go and see them. So.
Is the cable to prevent you from going deeper too?
The cable is there to prevent me from going deeper because that's my very first dive with these things. Yeah, my very first dive was enough. I dropped in the water. This was over a decade ago, and I found out about these wonderful animals. So I hired this Ponga fisherman to take me out there and go look at them, you know, because I heard this legend that there were man-eating squid in the Sea of Cortez. I'm like, okay, yeah. It's like, okay, there's man-eating squid. Well, they're about this big, right? You know, they might bite you. Ooh, I'm scared, you know. And I've researched white sharks. I've ridden on the back of a ton shark, you know. I mean, I figured I could handle it. Well, But I was in love with squid from when I was a kid. You know, at 6 years old is when I think 20,000 Leagues Into the Sea came out, and I was there, and I watched it. I was like, oh my God, that squid's attacking the Nautilus. I'm there. You know, that's my whole life is about squid and subs. And sure enough, what am I doing now? You know, squid and subs. So, but when I heard that these squid existed, I was like, okay, there's a legendary demonio rojo, red demon of animals, squid in the Sea of Cortez that'll kill people. Okay, so yeah, Bigfoot's alive too. So I don't know, maybe he is. The fact is, these squid do exist. And I talked to my friends at Scripps, and they go, well, there's some 4- and 5-foot squid that are down there that can give you a heck of a bite, but they're not going to hurt you. So That's what the scientist told me. So I hired a Ponga fisherman. We get out there, and he catches a squid, and he's bringing it up. And he's like, you know, you're going to go in the water, and you're going to die. I'm like, I don't think so. I'm okay. So I roll off into the water, and I'm 5 feet underwater. And I look under there, and this beautiful 5-foot squid on a jig. Unfortunately, the animal's under stress because he's hooked, you know. And I'm swimming up there, and I'm filming him, and I was absolutely in love and mesmerized by the chromatophore changes. And while I was just looking at the camera and just getting this and just thinking that this was epic, I didn't bother looking around me and realize that they're all coming around me like this. And I see this peripheral movement. And just as I look over there, it just went bad down from there. I got my shoulder pulled out of the socket, as I said, because one grabbed a hand on my camera and yanked it back and pulled my shoulder out this way. And then a bunch of them grabbed me and started pulling me down. Fighting the power of a Humboldt squid is like hanging onto a full-fledged fire hose and expecting to be able to carve your name in the dirt. Good luck. You know, it's amazing amount of power on these squid. So they pulled me on down, and I'm trying to kick myself free, and my arm is hurt, but I'm not going to let go of my camera. And my right eardrum imploded because they were pulling me down too rapidly. And that's when I really started fighting hard, and I got free. I clawed my way up to the surface, and the Ponga fisherman was like, I told you. You know? So since then, chainmail, cables, I haven't really been hurt too bad since. So what you're about to see right now, you're the first crew to actually see this, and it's endoscopic examination of a giant Humboldt squid. These are the chromatophores of the hyponome, right before we're going to go into the mantle. And you can see all these little cells right here changing. They open like little umbrellas and they close. And you can see how quickly they do it. And actually, you're going to see this rippling effect all the way across this. See how fast that is. So here we are, we're actually going down into the hyponome, right into the squid, and this is what you see on the outside, and then bam, we're inside a living giant Humboldt squid, and there's the gill structures. This right here is the artery of oxygenated blood, which is blue, and clear, deoxygenated blood on cyanin is crystal clear, like seawater. So you can't see the blood vessels, and they're all over the place. This, by the way, is a female. Kind of cool, huh? Didn't know this was going to be XXX. But this is actually her fallopian tubes and her ovaries right there. And yes, we released her unharmed. Right in the center here, this is the ligament right here. There's the aortic arch, just like what we have anchoring our heart aorta right to our spine. And so these are the magnificent gill structures right there. And they're held together by these filaments that we didn't even know existed until we saw them for real. And here we are right down the center. And we see the beating heart right there. And this right here is a brachial heart. They have 3 hearts. They have a heart, a brachial heart right at the base of every gill structure. And they have 2 gill structures, and then they have a center heart which pumps the oxygenated blood. There's the other heart. So you can see how fast this heartbeat is. And this is after a little anesthesia. This is after she's relaxed. And so you can see the gill structures right there with the blue. This is the peristalsis effect of the major vein pumping the blood. Actually, this does have a pumping effect on their veins, unlike us, going right back to the heart. Now this is inside the stomach of a giant Humboldt squid. And it's really lovely to see. I hope you guys are okay with it. The brown reddish color there is actually, it shows it was feeding on hematocrit, hemoglobin-based animals like fish. And if it eating squid, this would be clear because the blood would be clear, right? So we're actually pulling back up through the crop. We just entered the stomach. And this crop right here is where they pre-swallow their food. And then we're going to go right through you can see the pyloric sphincter right now. We're coming back to the sphincter above that closes off the stomach. And you can see how it pleats just like ours does because it swells up rather large. They can eat quite a bit of food for their size. And so as we're getting closer to the surface, the bubbles take up. We come out through the throat, and here's the anchoring structure for the radula, which is that crown of gold, which is a spike-covered tongue that grabs the meat from the bite and puts it down the gullet. And right here, we have no idea what this pumping structure is, but it's not blood and it's not stomach. So we don't know why it's there. So it's exciting to know that we're seeing new stuff, even nowadays. Now, one of the other things that we have done in the past, and we continue to do it because it's very exciting what we get out of it, is squid cam. And the other guys, they say that they have a critter cam. So I have a squidder cam. And we actually put the camera together, and we give the piercing of the squid, and we let her go. So here we are getting one of my little buddies, and it's jigged, and the animal's under stress. He doesn't realize I'm going to release it. But so he gives me a little bit of a fight there. And so this was on a clear, beautiful day. And so It's a relatively small squid, so we actually put the piercing through it, and then we put a cotter pin on it. And then you see there's a micro tether that actually holds the camera to the boat so we can retrieve her, and we let her go. You see all the armor that I'm wearing in case of a bite. And so she descends on down, and we usually let them go for half a day. And they go all the way down to 1,000 feet deep, according to the data sensor that we have. And while they're down there, they take footage for us. That's fantastic. Here she is flying inside of a shoal of her buddies. And the formation flying, the population density of the shoals, all these things we learned. But we also have actually filmed mating behavior. While she had a camera on her back, she may have just become a mama. So once again, you didn't realize this was going to be that sexy. So here we are releasing her, and she's quite okay. So we really, it has a very low light sensitivity CCD, but it also does have a ring of LEDs that we don't like to use very much because it scares the squid away. You know, most species of squid, when you turn the lights on, they come up to the boat. Humboldt squid are like monsters. You turn the lights on, and they disappear back into the dark. You know, so they like the dark. They're very effective at what we just did last month, actually, is, not yet. What we did last month is we used night vision scopes underwater. Oh. Told you not to give me that thing. Me and technology don't. That's why I study squid, because I'm not very good with any technology. What we did is we actually had a night vision camera system, and I went down at night diving alone with the squid with no lights. And that was a little bit tricky because they were really quite large, and they would just come hurtling out of the dark, and they'd be grabbing onto me. I really didn't know which way they were coming. And then after a while, my eyes started to adjust. And by the way, this camera has a feed up to the surface, and I'm wearing communications. And Sean is saying, okay, there's a squid to the right. So I'm like, am I in frame? I can't see. And a fascinating thing that we discovered was the bioluminescence, that beautiful blue-green algae color that glows when it's illuminated or aggravated, is both a defensive system as well as a predation system that the squid use. And what they do is, I was actually filming these little fish swimming, and they're creating this cone of light behind them. And the squid will come up underneath them and then follow inside of that cone of light. So they'll hide bright white, not a single red pigment in their body, just ghostly white, tracking the animal from behind inside of its own light that it emits. And so all of a sudden, got them. And so we actually filmed that with the night vision system. So we didn't know that the squid would hide inside the light during the night. So it's kind of an interesting predation technique that I certainly didn't expect it coming, you know. And sure enough, after I was like, wow, they're actually hunting on these mackerel and stuff by following behind them. I wonder, and sure enough, they're all in back of me, following me. I'm like, I got you guys. I'm figuring you out. And I actually didn't get hurt too bad because of that. So what we are doing is also, yeah?
Was the light from the prey's bioluminescence, or was it from algae, like, or sort of
Oh,
plankton or something in the water?
yes, the planktons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the animals themselves weren't creating any bioluminescence, but it was really beautiful. I would love for all of you guys to see that. Imagine dangling inside the nighttime water without a light anywhere on it, and it's really, really dark. But you can still see things. If you've ever gone hiking at night without a light, you know, you can kind of see, you know, and it's kind of like that. And so you're hanging on this cable in armor, and there's monsters all around you, right? And it's just kind of a neat idea anyway. And you're watching all of these school of fish going by, and every fish makes its own tube of light. And so you got this giant cloud of light going through, and then you see these massive tubes coming up with these 4 to 7 foot squid, and they're like very quietly stalking the prey from behind. And you can watch this happening. And it's just an amazing thing. It's like watching a lion stalking a gazelle, you know? It's like, except of course the gazelle's not making a trail of light, but you get the idea. You can see what's going on from a distance, and it's just fantastic. I was so happy to actually see that. What we're working on right now is one of the projects is I want to put these animals in captivity. And I have a myriad of reasons for that, but primarily it's because I like squid. I want everybody to see them. And can you imagine going to the aquarium and seeing a 6-foot squid, you know, 10 times over? And you see this wonderful shoal of squid patrolling around this tank, and they were raised since they were little. So this is the life that they know. And the reason this is important, I'll go into later. I don't like to see any animal in captivity, but this animal particularly captures the imagination and is going to directly affect all of us. And I'll explain why here in a little bit. So we've been working with scripts and the Aquarium of the Pacific. And here's Shauna, actually. She's one of the research assistants out in the field. And she's gearing up, and she's going to do our Vanna White. She's actually swimming right next to our anesthesia round and our open net. And that net pen is where we actually grab the squid and we put them inside to start doing our testing on. And so here's Steve from the Aquarium of the Pacific and myself. I'm dragging in a squid that's been caught on a jig. Unfortunately, that's still the most effective way to grab them. But I've reduced the impact on that. It's barbless. They're all clean. There's lots of things I do to the jig to make it less painful for them. But here they are getting used to it, and they're not used to touching anything. So they touch the net and freaks them out a little bit. And so here we have them actually starting to acclimate and become quite calm. And they became so calm that we actually started to feed them. And so here's Shauna taking this shot, and it doubles back to attack her, and she bravely gets the heck out of the pen. But watch this guy. He saw a hole, and he got right out. I mean, tell me they're not smart. And so he's actually eating fish in captivity after a few minutes of them acclimating to it. So that was amazing. So we're actually feeding them fresh fish. And sure enough, they would actually start to bottom feed, which is a behavior we suspected, but we now have evidence they will do, which means they also feed on benthic species. So it's quite a nice realization there. So benthic, animals that live on the bottom, as well as swimming in the midwater. So this is actually a anesthesia that we're putting inside there because we wanted to determine how do we care for these animals once they're inside there. If they wound themselves, how do we treat them? If they have infections, how do we get close to them without them stressing? And how can we sew them together if they get wounded? You know, how do we care for the animal in captivity? So we're learning how to put them under anesthesia. And sure enough, we found out that different types of metals and sodiums will actually put them under just like general anesthesia on us. So we would actually weigh them. I'm always the guy that has to lift the darn thing up. I don't know why. So we're weighing them and we're measuring them and we're taking really cool samples of blood. And we also actually got to do some dissolved oxygen testing. And here we are hand feeding a 65-pound squid. And I just love that. So, and once again, I wish we had audio because you can actually hear him crunching as he's going through the skull of the sardine. So, and we do a neurological test. A good way to do it is put them up against the lens of the camera to make sure that the beak is working. This is a place you don't want to go. And here we are actually releasing one of our guys that's come out of anesthesia successfully. And you see we put the blue tarp on the bottom. It was less annoying to them than the mesh, the net. So I always swim them forward out there because it ram charges water into this across the gills. And kind of hang out with them for a while because we've seen that they are cannibals. And in order to have our guys not die from cannibalization, I want to make sure that they're able to fight themselves. One of the ways is there's a vasovagal nerve right there inside the mantle. And when you pull on it, they'll flash white. And you'll actually see that I do that test here in just a second. See, he's really dark right now. He's trying to hide. But his arms are coming together, which is a neurological. See how he flashed white right there? And then he looks good, so I let him go. But they're so relaxed around us now that they'll let you handle them. So now he's not sure if I've actually let him go. So he's going to hang out here for a minute. And I tickle his bottom, her bottom, ventral, not. And wake them up a little bit. And sure enough, they go down. So I follow them down as far as I can to make sure that they don't need to be recovered. Bring them back up. And see her arms come together. And a few siphon blows, and she's off. That's kind of an insight to my office and what I do. So, but the nice thing is that we're actually learning more about the squid, and we're realizing we don't know anything about the squid. There's so much about them that just doesn't make any sense. And when I say that, we're up in warm water right here. You can see my wetsuit there is only 1 mil thick. It's very warm up here. And I only wear that wetsuit because there's a lot of jellyfish that will sting the crap out of you. So here we are in warm water that's highly oxygenated that can heat stress an animal that lives in water that's almost Arctic cold most of the time at 1,000+ feet. So we also find out that the water down there is relatively low oxygen. And when we did dissolved oxygen testing, we found out that the animal needs as much oxygen, pound per pound, as a hummingbird. Requires a tremendous amount of oxygen. So we actually take the squid, put them inside of a container, clamp it up so there's no interface with the air. So the oxygen inside the water is all there is with the oxygen sensor inside of it. And we actually can watch the cascade of the oxygen, and it just went through the floor fast. So these animals need a tremendous amount of oxygen. So how in the world can an animal that lives in the deep where there's no oxygen or very low oxygen live like that and then come up here in the cold, warm water where it should, I mean, have you ever bought a goldfish and he's in the bag and you put him inside the water and you let him acclimate inside the water, because if you put him right inside there, he's going to die because it's a degree or two different? This animal goes in 45-degree water all the way up to 80-degree water in a few minutes, and they make it look easy. Now let's also give the qualification of that. They're traveling 1,000 feet plus through the water column. That's 500 pounds of pressure per square inch difference, and they make it look easy. And the oxygen change is amazing. We just don't know how they do it. So we're wondering, maybe there's a physiological aspect there that could benefit us. So that's why we keep researching it. We're trying to find out what is going on with this animal. Yes?
So with the anesthesia, do you have any issue where they're not able to breathe in enough? They're kind of putting other gills that are gone or something like that?
You got to wonder. I mean, you know, what we need to do is we need a, you know, in Star Trek, we need to put them on that table and totally scan the whole animal out, figure out everything from the molecules on up to the teeth, you know, and the arm. I don't know how they work.
But I mean, you didn't have problems when you were putting those metals in there and then they kind of become more sedated.
Yeah.
Breathing,
Yeah, their breathing was regular and their heartbeats were good and everything was going great. Then we put them in fresh water and, you know, fresh ocean water, and then they recover quite well. Neurological tests check out, and then we re-release them. So we don't think there's any residual effect from it, but it's just fantastic that, you know, here you are holding a 100-pound squid or a 50-pound squid, and it's just laying out. You can do anything to it. You know, you can scope them, do all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't care. So check them for cancer. So one of the things that's fascinating about this animal is that when we're doing our research in the Sea of Cortez, I'm trying to find out how the fisheries are working. You know, are we overfishing them? Are we underfishing, if there is such a thing? What's going on? And we determined that we can't find any evidence that the squid were in the Sea of Cortez previous to 1920. In fact, they were named Humboldt Squid from Alexander von Humboldt, found them in the Humboldt Current off of Peru. So were they ever in the Sea of Cortez prior to that? We don't know. So the evidence indicates there were no record landings. We know people were settled there and they were fishing. The sharks started to drop around that time because they were overfishing the sharks in the Sea of Cortez, which are almost all gone now. I mean, there are some sharks there, but according to what was there, they're not. So we're finding that the distribution is kind of fun. The animal is really quite unique when it comes to its fecundity. And fecundity is how many babies can this thing actually make? And a shark will have 1 to 4 pups that are viable every other year, every 2 years perhaps. A tuna, 500 to 100,000, so quite a bit. But a Humboldt squid, 1 million to 5 million eggs per female. And so now you start to realize, okay, this is a rabbit. And the wolves are the tunas and the sharks. And guess what we've been eating a lot of? And so now we find that now that the shark population has crashed, everybody's, I mean, that craze of shark cartilage we found doesn't work, you know? And how many sharks died for that? And shark fin soup and all this kind of stuff. The shark populations, 400 million sharks a year are being killed. 400 million. That's a lot of sharks that don't reproduce very quickly. And tuna, they're in the, you know, they only live for about 5 years. They breed fairly well. But a Humboldt squid is 1 million. We think the age lifespan of a Humboldt squid is only 2 years. That means an animal that grows from the size of a sesame seed at birth, when there's a pupa larva coming out of the egg, to growing to what I've filmed 8 feet plus in 2 years, that'd be the same as a human baby growing to the same size as a blue whale in the same amount of time. So the growth rate is just staggering. And there's 1 million each? Okay, so there's an interesting math formula for you. If you eat all the tuna and you eat all the sharks, what's going to happen to the rabbit? If we take out all the wolves and bears and stuff like that, yeah, the population is going to explode. And that's what we're finding out. And more research that I do, the more scared I'm getting. So, yeah, go ahead, the shark cam video. So here we are, sharks just or a squid's just minding her own business with a squid cam on her back, and then all of a sudden, what do we see produced but a blue shark? And the blue shark successfully attacks and really starts to tear into my squid. And she was telling me that there's something attacking the squid, so I jump in the water to go and beat up the shark, right, to try to get him off of my camera squid. But by the time I got on the water and I was going to start wrestling the shark, mortally wounded was our squid. So the footage that we have is fantastic illustration on the food chain that we have sharks that feed on squid of equal size. And so what's going to happen if all the sharks are gone? There's a good illustration that who eats who here. Now, we've also seen sharks being eaten by squid that are smaller than the squid. So it's like whoever wins is whoever's bigger. So the problem here is that unfortunately, one of my camera squid that didn't live through the experiment actually gave us a piece of information that was fantastic. And that is almost every species of shark that's pelagic will eat the squid. So if we take away all the sharks, we have a new distribution migratory problem here. Here we have where they first started. We have off the coast of Peru all the way up to the tip of Panama, right here to the northern scope of Chile. And that's where the Humboldt Current does a lot of its action. And if you notice, that's a pretty broad scope of any species of animal, considering that the silky sharks that are in the Sea of Cortez, only, if you look at this map, they only occupied that much area. Right? So the Humboldt squid already had a pretty significant area when Alexander von Humboldt found them. Now, what we found is right about the time where the fishery is indicated. The orange indicates where they were starting to fish the squid and find them basically for the first time in the 1930s all the way up to the 1970s. Now, from the 1970s on up, we're finding that the distribution has increased quite a bit. And so now we find that the distribution of the Humboldt squid is going all the way down to Antarctica and is going all the way up to Sitka, Alaska. Now, that's a concern, right? So it's not just the expansion of their range, but the population of these animals is the same all throughout. We're finding out there's a lot of squid in these areas. One of my friends who surfs La Jolla, California, he said that after he saw one of my documentaries, he was thinking, wow, this squid are pretty neat. I'd love to see one. He looks in the water, and there's 3-foot Humboldt squid going underneath a surfboard. And he got out of the water because he saw my shows. He saw how I got beat up. And so here we have this new distribution of this animal. And right here off the coast of Chile, the Humboldt squid successfully wiped out a $6 million a year industry of the hake fishery. Wiped it out in 2 years. Completely gone. From when the squid first showed up to a complete collapse of that animal. And so now the Chilean government is actually growing their own hake, re-releasing them back in the water, and they've shut down that fishery, and now they're fishing squid, trying to get the balance back to where it once was. And what I just found out this year, as I testified in front of the Department of Fish and Game, is that up in Northern California, the fishery of salmon just shut down. Who here likes salmon? Guess what's going away very, very quickly? It's an endangered species anyway, but we still fish them. That part I can't figure out. And so now they're gone in Northern California at the same time frame the squid just showed up 2 years ago. I think there's a correlation there. And so one of the concerns that I have is, one of the reasons I'm going up to Bodega Bay and I'm doing a lot of the research up there, is we're doing stomach content analysis, and we're actually looking at this, and I'm interviewing fishermen that have seen the salmon hanging out in front of the rivers, acclimating to fresh water, and the squid will come marauding through there and wipe out an entire breeding population of salmon before they ever go upriver to spawn. Okay, that strikes me in the bad box, right? And so first of all, the squid aren't even supposed to be there. So you see what I mean? These squid will directly affect a lot of people. And that's why I'm studying them so much. Not to mention they're really cool. They get really big. Now the population density of these animals in the Sea of Cortez is very high. But that's what we're expecting. If they're an invasive species in the Sea of Cortez, they weren't there from pre-1920s, what do we think is going to happen off the coast of California in 5 years? Yeah, and who did this? People that eat tuna and people that eat sharks. So really serious problem. Anytime you overfish a species, something's going to fill it. In this case, we have something that's filling the niche that's a little bit scary. These animals have already probably shut down the rock fishery just last month, right here on the coast of California. So now you see why I'm excited about this animal. You know, there's a lot going on with it. So systems. It's all about systems. Yes, sir.
So speaking with respect to evolutionary biodiversity,
Mhm.
that's a very large span of ecosystems.
Huge.
How is it that squid can feed on prey in both the Arctic and like off the coast of California and like even the different kinds of Arctic ecologies off the coast of Alaska?
That's a brilliant question. Very, very good question. His question is how can an animal that was, in the Humboldt Current adapt to feeding on animals that it encounters in the subarctic and subantarctic and all the regions in between? And that is that the Humboldt squid is very likely the most opportunistic predator I've ever seen, potentially the most in the world. They explore everything for food. I mean, you saw that jig? Did that look appetizing to anybody here? I mean, it's a freaking horrible device of doom with this little glow stick on it. And this little, like a little glow toy, the vampire teeth, it's made out of the same glow-in-the-dark stuff. You put it up to a light, it glows in the dark. So they throw this thing down the water. All the squid sees is this unidentifiable green shape, and it grabs onto it, see if they can eat it. So that's how adaptable they are. They explore everything as food, including people. They have actually been found to kill and eat people. So in the Seal Cortez, I found 4 people that lost their lives to the squid. So that's another thing that you don't hear a lot about, But it's interesting. But how many squid are captured for every person that's taken? So the odds are in our favor. We're still winning. So the next thing is I've really loved squid, and as you know, I put cameras on squid, let them go. And what we did last year is I've been watching who eats Humboldt squid, and one of them, of course, is sperm whales. But the sperm whales only eat the very large Humboldt squid. So why in the world would sperm whales be diving and feeding off the coast of Loretto where the squid just aren't that big? Unless there's something underneath them that's even bigger. And so what we did is we put a very long squidder cam on the wing of a squid that was a relatively small girl in the same area that I saw the sperm whales feeding, in anticipation that we'd find out why the sperm whales were actually there. And this is what we found. Here we are at about 900 feet deep, and there in front of my squid is an animal whose head is 4 feet across. And it's not all that great imagery, but what you can see is that the animal's arms are from tip to tip, which is over 30 feet of visual cone and visibility. And all of her arms weren't clearly seen. And so what that equates to is a 35 to 50 foot squid, where they're not supposed to exist. And one of the things that I found fascinating is one of the gentlemen that I understudied under for a brief time, who was studying sperm whales, decided to do a reverse autotrophic leveling, which is say how much food required in this area to keep this sperm whale alive. Look at down to the calorie. And so what he did is he actually looked all the way from plankton all the way down to the sperm whale. And right above it, of course, is the squid population. And when he found out this many sperm whales exist, therefore, with mortality, species reproduction, as well as predation, this is how many giant squid have to exist. Does anybody want to make a mad stab at how many giant squid are probably out there? At least 1 for every human on the planet. Giants. These are not Humboldt squid, these are giants. And so if you actually think about that, then it ain't all that cool. I mean, my squid just happened to be a snack for a giant squid, and my girl got away, right? So we've actually been successful a couple more times filming giant squid. I'm the only one in the world to actually film a giant squid living in the wild that's not on a jig, because the Japanese caught one on a jig. That's great. I've seen lots of squids on jigs. That didn't impress me. I wanted to see them swimming around in attack mode. And the way you do that is put cameras on their food, right? So you put a camera on a sperm whale and send them on down there. What are the odds of a lion landing a food every attack? 1 in 20? Not very often. They make a lot of attempts and they don't make it. What you do is you find the food that the squid want to eat, who are very successful predators, and then you're going to get your shots. So we've actually done this more than once. And you'll see more about that in a couple of months when the next shows come out.
What happens when the predatory animal eats the camera?
We really hope that the footage was worth it. So
But
now,
did they digest it? They spit it back up? You just kind of reel it up?
Well, it hasn't happened yet. So we do have a contingency plan. Reel up what's left, send it back to the factory, put on a new camera. So,
Avoid the warranty?
yeah, well, yeah. If people knew what I did with the stuff that they sponsored me with, they probably would stop sponsoring me. Yeah, yeah. I mean, so far we've been able to return everything sponsored to us. So I've got a pretty good record there, but it may not be that way forever. So the reason I bring up the Humboldt Squid, and the reason that oh, I'm scared though. I'll probably screw this up. Okay. The reason that we're doing all of this is I had a very important man in my life, who's basically my adopted father, did a rather amazing program called the Challenger Project, which was taking a submersible and going down to the Challenger deep, 27, I think it was 27,500 feet. And so it was an amazing feat. And this man was Dr. Andy Rechnitzer. But his most exciting project he never got to do. And with other brilliant people around him, they were actually going to circumnavigate the Earth in an underwater glider for science. Because as you know, the Trieste, the Challenger Deep project, was performed by the United States Navy to say that we were there first. It didn't collect a lot of scientific information, but it laid out a magnificent gauntlet for all of us to follow. The Undersea Voyager Project, which is a program that is now a nonprofit corporation, was done with a promise I made to him of the project that he never got to complete. And it's a very passionate program for me. But it based on this simple question. And so what actually happens next? We saw what is happening with the Humboldt Squid. Well, there's some other very serious issues that are happening right now. So what, as a species, as a collective, what do we need to learn to boldly go into the next decade? A decade of great changes. We all know what's going on by just watching the news, by listening to what scientists are saying. So what are the challenges? Well, one of them is drug-resistant diseases are on the rise. And in 25 years, read this twice, most common fisheries will collapse in 25 years. That's in our lives, right? And in 50 years, all major fisheries will either have a severe impact or be closed. How many third world countries rely on fish? What's going to happen when their principal food source slowly dwindles away? And they've already turned to it because the farming's collapsed. Any problems there? It's a real serious problem. And so what are we actually going to do about the whole, the theory that's being proved very correct that the planet's temperature is on the rise? So we find out that in order to answer these questions, we have to look more into the ocean. So in my opinion, the ocean is the next frontier. Not just the surface of the sea where everybody's already seen it and we can look at it from space and say, that's beautiful surface of the ocean. And not these little tiny areas that submersibles have gone to the bottom and they've caroused around a little bit and seen these magnificent ecosystems of hydrothermal vents or what human impact of a shipwreck will do. What I'm talking about is where all the life is. The life barely hangs out on the bottom. And most of the life on the surface we've seen. But the largest biomass on the planet and the largest ecosystem in the world is also the least explored, and that's in the 1,000-foot range. People go down to the bottom, or they tow stuff behind boats. Very little has ever been seen about this. So that's what this is all about. The Undersea Voyager Project is the corporation that I've started as a nonprofit, and it's simple. Exploration, knowledge, and discovery. It's the legitimate thing. We really are trying to do what nobody else has ever done before. And so here we have our squid attacking the sub, and I think we all know what that means. So the ship is going to send this information up to the schoolhouse that's watching their teacher, and now they have something really exciting and epic to say. And this is actually the basis of the Undersea Voyager Project, is that I kind of see myself as a taxi cab driver. And I'm going to make an invitation to the world scientific community saying, hey, we got this great little sub, which by the way, we already own. And we got all these wonderful sponsors putting this telemetry gathering equipment on the outside of this sub. And so, and by the way, I know how to film giant squid already, right? I'm the guy who actually did it. And I have something in mind. I have a plan to make my sub look like food. So we're going to get some pretty fantastic images, I guarantee you that. And then this will be wired directly up to the surface by way of an umbilical. Because our little sub depth has a crush rating much shallower than the depth of the oceans, we can't allow that sub to go across these great chasms untethered. That tether slows us down. But what it does is it gives us a wonderful opportunity to send up information real time to the rest of the world. And so we all know that ships can with communication systems that can fit on a ship, we can talk to anybody. We can send up massive amounts of information to the satellite, which can beam it down to whoever can disseminate that. So it's a very exciting prospect. So this is one of our subs, actually. So how will we do this? Well, the goal is to travel 27,000 miles around the Earth. Guys, you can't go 24,000 miles around the Earth because there's land in the way. So we have to zigzag here and there. But we're going to go at a record depth of 1,000 feet deep, which is that giant biomass, that giant ecosystem that I was telling you about that's largely unexplored. And we're going to perform scientific transects in alliance with the international scientific community, political community, and educational institutions at every level. Can you imagine seeing a senator inside of this sub addressing Congress saying, hey guys, look what I'm looking at right here? I mean, that's exciting. Or a school teacher talking to her class in Kenya. I just came back from Africa talking to people about this. They love this idea. I already have South African people interested in helping out there, as well as paving the way politically to get around other countries in Africa. So the idea is that if I put a teacher, and that's why this is a three-man sub, one pilot, two. So we have two observers, a scientist and a school teacher, or a senator, or a wealthy individual, or a technical guru, people that have something to say to an audience that needs to listen. And I like the idea of the teacher saying, hey, guess what? We just happen to have a 1,000-pound squid hanging off the starboard side. If you look at it, you can see the beak chomping on the camera. So it's kind of an exciting prospect. But you also see the size of our little subs. In fact, is that the subs are a wonderful platform in which to put scientific collection instruments. And on my board of directors, of course, I have people that are smarter than me. People that are actually scientists that are working on the Mars projects from Jet Propulsion Laboratories, and the senior scientist at JPL and NASA who's looking for life on other planets. Those are my two vice presidents. And they know how to talk to the scientific community. And we're inviting everybody that has an idea on collecting water toxicology, or doing the world's longest plankton tow, or whatever type of instrument data collection system they can put on the outside of the sub, are invited to let us know what they want to do. We'll help them work out a grant. We'll negotiate it ahead of time, and we'll make it happen. And if they can't find money, come and talk to me anyway, because the idea may be so awesome, we've just got to find a way to do it. The idea is to make this submersible, and whatever mapping system it can do below, or whatever information that I can gather, disseminated to the entire world, real time, through the umbilical to the sub. This is a humankind project. It's not Scott's project. It's a gift, in a sense, to the rest of the world. And you can see the visibility inside of the machines. They're pretty fantastic, aren't they? I have 800 dives in these types of subs, actually. Coast Guard rated captain of 3 different vessels. And this, by far, is my favorite. And I'm probably going to Greece in a couple of days to fly this sub. So it's a magnificent machine. Our transects. Well, first of all, we got to start slow. And we're going to do a lot of things here local. And the Tahoe, of course, is the Lake Tahoe undersea voyage, so we get to do some work right here in California. The Move is the maiden undersea voyage, where I already hold the world record for the longest dive of an underwater glider, where we launched from San Pedro, and I flew the sub all the way to Catalina Island and back on one dive with the glider system with no power. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but I'm the guy who did it. And that was a long, cold dive. I was actually a diver, and I had to desaturate in chambers for hours after that. Coffee never tasted so good in my life coming out of that. And the SOCOV is the Sea of Cortez undersea voyage, which I'm actually going to do a 500-mile transect in the Sea of Cortez, looking at the shark populations, looking for long luff drift nets, water quality sampling, maybe a couple of giant squid here and there. You know. And then after we prove everything, we're going to the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf of Mexico undersea voyage. And as you guys may have heard, there's some massive dead zones inside the Gulf of Mexico that we don't actually know exactly why they're there. We know that it's based on nitrates, that there's a new plankton that absorbs all the oxygen and kills everything there. But we actually want to do a giant transect, and we got some folks from Texas that are very interested in jumping in on that. And once we're all done with that one, then we probably worked all the bugs out. Now it's time to go around the world. But these are some of the wonderful animals that I know these people that are working on. One of my particular pet favorites is the coelacanth, where we've been working in Africa, and the vaquita porpoise, which is is probably the most endangered mammal in the world, and very few people even know it exists. And it's in the Sea of Cortez. And the reason it's in bad shape is because of the Hoover Dam, and that's giving all the power to Las Vegas. We found out that not only do the animals still exist, but they're being poached. So actually, we've been hunting the poachers part-time and filming them and kind of helping out the Mexican government do that stuff too. So
What does the Hoover Dam have to do with that?
so glad somebody asked that question. The Hoover Dam is innocently damming up the water that went through the Colorado River and emptied into the Sea of Cortez. And it just so happens that the freshwater, brackish water interface allowed the vaquita to feed on the animals that were feeding on the shrimp that have now gone extinct. And so now the vaquita dolphin or porpoise, their food supply has been shut down. And now the salinity levels brought up, and they have a hard time existing in very high salinity levels. And so they're only 1 meter long at full length. They're tiny, beautiful little harbor porpoise. And there's only 400, excuse me, God bless you, there's only 400 of them left. And so I'm actually helping the Mexican government try to track them. And it's a needle in a haystack. A small animal in dark green water, it's really hard to find. But we've had some luck. This is an oarfish, as you guys have seen. That's a rather magnificent fish that's estimated length of over 60 feet at full length. So that's the only picture of a live one underwater that actually didn't die. All the other pictures are ones that are in the process of dying. So all of these animals, but also other ones that we haven't even explored yet. Imagine, we've only seen 2%. 2% of the ocean. 98% of the ocean has not even been seen by us. And we've already depleted a lot of fish species and interrupted ecosystems that we don't even understand yet. So what do you think the odds are of taking a submarine in 1,000 feet deep and going 27,000 miles over a period of 5 years and not seeing undiscovered species? Pretty low. So the odds of us finding new stuff is exciting. So that's why I've signed up. So MESONYCHOTEUTHIS and ARCHITEUTHIS. Well, we've seen them on a jig. See the big old jig right there, and you see this wonderful ARCHITEUTHIS that died. And then, of course, we've also seen the Capt. This is the MESONYCHOTEUTHIS that was caught in the Ross Sea and is now being custodianed by my friend Steve O'Shea in Auckland. And he's actually doing the autopsy on this thing as we speak. And you see the gaff right there in the head. What do these things, what do they look like in the ocean?
Are these like variations of giant squid?
Yeah, this is the giant squid. And this is the colossal squid. This is bigger than this. And this was a 1,086-pound animal that wasn't even sexually mature. That's a big squid. Now the neat thing is that you look at the size of the wings on this guy, and they're fanning through, so you don't actually see the whole size of the wings. Now you see that the wings on this animal are 1/3 the rest of the body, maybe a little more than that, right? Humboldt squid, same size ratio. Humboldt squid, a hunt, drag, grapple predator, and I think the MESONYCHOTEUTHIS is as well. This guy is an ambush predator. Tiny little wings, muscular arms, really long tentacles, right? Like the one I filmed in the Sea Cortez. And you see how it was opened up when my little squid came into the area with the lights on it? The tiny lights on that camera were enough to scare away a 1,500-pound animal. Oop, freaked him out, not going to attack this squid. That's the reason I got the image and my camera survived the event. It's because that little light probably scared away this animal. That's how timid the giant squid is. This guy probably feeds on whales as well as everything down the food chain. So this is the animal that I want to see face to face. So the bottom line is that we've seen these animals dead, dying, and on jigs, except for the footage that my team and I successfully got on the little critter cam. And you see it's not that vivid. So what we're excited about now is the future. And it's one of the ideas that I have of our nice little specially built sub that is already in design and already in construction. So this is the Undersea Voyager Project, her continuing 5-year mission to seek out new life and knowledge and go where no person has gone before. I started to write that down in my business statement, or my mission statement. I was like, God, this sounds familiar. It sounds familiar. And one of my friends was like, yeah, it sounds familiar because, and I was like, oh, I've really got to change that. But it's the truth, isn't it? It is the truth. And that's what's exciting about it. We really are living in an age where pioneers and explorers can be at the front runner of science again. And it's simply because we have the technology, and I think now we have the will to do it, because a lot of people realize that there's so much unknown about the planet that we have to learn it in order for our species to move into the next peaceful decade. Because if we don't learn it, what's going to happen in 50 years if all the fish actually do dry up? And it's not me that came up with those numbers. It was an impartial group of biologists that were studying the history of fisheries, and the projection of the future. They weren't trying to scare anybody, but what they found is frightening. And we can change all that. And the Undersea Voyager Project is a part of it. And the reason I say why is because mankind has this problem of not protecting what he doesn't know about. So the more we know, the more we'll protect. And by the way, the more we realize that there's a problem, we are an industrious, brilliant species that comes up with solutions every time. So we can pull out of this dive. By the way, this was off of Costa Rica on its way down to a 1,500-foot dive where it filmed a 6-gill shark over 2,000 pounds. We didn't even know we were that big. So this was a great dive. So, any questions? Yes, sir.
Questions? You want to go up to the mic and then it gets recorded on the...
But while you're walking up there, so I get to look at you eye to eye because you're standing up, can you guys imagine having a sensor on the belly of the sub that makes an accurate map rendition of the bottom for 27,000 miles of undiscovered ocean, linked up real time for the world to see? I don't know if that would interest you guys or not, but it sure gets me all thrilled. Yes, sir.
So the Undersea Voyager Project is going to have 2 technicians and then 1 sort of third party watching the action, be it a school teacher or a senator. Are there plans to have like normal people be a part of it as well?
Yeah.
I'm not asking for myself, but from a real economic perspective, it's like Joe consumer that drives the market demand for things like salmon and has the habits and behaviors that have an impact on sustainability. So if like seeing a senator or like a rock star at the bottom of a sub is something that your average consumer is used to seeing, they don't really care about the impact in terms of their own lifestyle choices if they don't actually have an experience of what the impact of their choices are.
That's a brilliant question. I appreciate that. And the fact is that I am that regular guy. I'm not a rock star and I'm not a politician. My education is in medicine. I decided to go to the ocean because I see the value and the need. I think that anybody can sit inside that left seat. And I'm going to open that up to as many people as possible. But just let me qualify what that means, is that we're going to be out on a ship away from everybody. So that means you're going to have to stay on the ship until we get to port, or we have a high-speed boat courier back and forth. So for the average person to spend a month at sea to get that one dive may be difficult, but absolutely not impossible. This program, the Undersea Voyager Project, is open to everybody. Every scientist around the world, every educational institution around the world, and every regular person around the world that wants to be a part of it can. And I think that's part of the beauty of it. Yes, sir. Cool.
I guess speaking as a carnivore, how do those taste?
You know,
Since you mentioned they're fishing them now.
Well, yeah, I mean,
popular.
Yeah, they are very popular, and the fact is a lot of folks do eat them. The biggest population and group that get them exported from Mexico is Korea and Japan. They really love them. How they taste, I have a pact with them. I won't eat them if they don't eat me. So, but having said that, the last documentary that we just did that's going to air in October, he did eat them. And he gave me a nice, thorough description. He said that they're very tasty, and they themselves don't have a taste, but they absorb all the wonderful spices and stuff. So it's kind of like living tofu. So carries the flavor of how you cook it. So that's all I know. That's all I know. But they do make a calamari ring the size of a truck tire. So small truck. So any more questions?
So I'm an engineer. Can you talk a little bit about the sub and why a glider and
how
that's going to work?
Oh, I love it. Well, this isn't going to be a glider. I did a test. I originally invented an underwater glider, which was ballast driven, so that I could film whales diving over long distances. So I wanted a sub that you could ballast all the air out of it, drop it into a dive, and as long as you're able to clear your ears, you can drop and film sideways as the whales are diving. And I wanted to actually film sperm whales preying on giant Humboldt squid. I wanted to get as much of it as I physically could because I couldn't think of an automated system to do that. So I thought, well, I'll do it. And while I was doing that, I decided to test it. And so I just went ahead and flew it all the way to Catalina and back and basically did, I think it was 57 miles, and made a world record and raised a lot of money for kids with heart disease while I was at it. But this particular machine is built here in Claremont, California, and it's called a Triumph. And it's the second generation of what the Undersea Voyager Project has. The current sub that we have, that we own, is a two-man sub. It's quite a bit smaller than that. In fact, if two people inside of there really got to like each other, because you're basically sitting on that person's back. Not literally, but that's how close it is. They're right between your legs with a port there, and you're sitting in a port here, and the dives aren't going to be any longer than the persons can tolerate. This sub right here, we're making dives 5, 6 hours, 10 hours at a time, and it's really quite comfortable. The thing is that if you have mixed company, the whole bladder control thing comes in, and so you do have to actually surface the sub every day, which means the sub is going to have differential GPS linked up to a real-time, and the sonar acquisition is going to spot the sub precisely. At the end of the dive, we recover, arrest the sub, get everybody out, refresh the sub, let the crew rest, change out people, change out instruments, put the sub back in the water after the refresh is done, and GPS align where it let off so that we can pick it right back up as close as humanly possible. So
Now you're getting power down the umbilical, right? So all you have to do
she has 20 hours of power on her for thruster control and 72 hours of life support. And that's a Coast Guard requirement, which I'm Coast Guard captain of that ship, of that boat. But yes, we will have power coming down the umbilical as well, because if we can charge the sub and get all of the information from the sub and power to the sub, let's leave the batteries for if we need them and need to detach away from the cable for any reason, like entanglement, which is being designed in. Engineering-wise, this thing's going to be a lot of fun. And by the way, did you guys notice anything? You got the two pontoons right here, right? And you got this big living quarters right here. If you take it and flip it upside down, doesn't it look like the old Enterprise? So, by the way, our uniforms. Seawolves is a company that I actually originally designed up. It's a filming crew and counterterrorism operation harbor. That's one of my old jobs. But Undersea Voyager Project, you see this little red dot right there? That stands for engineering, right? And a gold dot is command and control. And a blue dot is medicine and science. Anybody? So whoever's wearing the red dot might die. That's what I'm saying. So, but Undersea Voyager Project, and of course, my favorite logo of all. So we actually have serious designs in place to make that a reality, and I just can't wait to be flying the sub that day. So now imagine this, when the sub actually is attacked by a squid, a giant squid, it's going to drag away something with it. Its own little critter cam and data collection pod. It's going to self-inject and pull it away. Got that being designed up too. I just love what I'm doing. This is awesome stuff. Thing is, it's open to everybody. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How could Google help you more?
Oh God, put a really cool transducer system underneath it so that we can map the bottom, and then support everything with it. Let us put the name inside the sub. There's going to be a whole series of documentaries on this. It's going to literally be a series for the new age. And we are working very hard at developing and protecting the whole iconic image of the Undersea Voyager Project. So it is a mankind exploration to go where no man has gone before. And the documentaries that are going to be made off of that are literally going to be quite epic. I mean, we really are legitimate, honest to God, never before been there explorers. And yeah, we've been to 1,000 feet, hundreds of times in submarines. I probably know all the pilots that have been there. The submersible pilot community is really quite small. I know the Russian guys, I know the Canadian guys, I know the Alvin pilot. I mean, I know these guys. And they all say the same thing I do. If we could just stay at 1,000 feet and go, instead of dropping down to the bottom like a helicopter and looking over the small area, and then coming straight back up through where all the life is, we could learn so much. That's exactly what this whole program is about. So how Google can help? Any way you guys can think of is open to invitation. This is a taxi cab. Put anything on the outside of it you want that's going to benefit mankind, and I'll listen very carefully. Yeah, that's a good question. Any others? Come on, another good question. Come on.
What's the eco time for the glider?
Oh, it was 5 hours in desaturation in a chamber, which was on the boat.
Oh, so you just hopped on the boat.
Yeah, I had a boat over me the whole time from coastal diving, and which were friends of mine that supported the whole record. And here you are. Now you're in the water for 10 hours, freezing to death. There's the first thing. Think about that. So, and what my friend who is a nurse says, well, look, for getting your energy and keeping it, you need to have Pedialyte. So I had a Camelback system plumbed into my helmet, so I was actually sipping on Pedialyte. 20 minutes into the dive, I had a reaction to that stuff, and I was sick. Pedialyte, I mean, what kind of an idiot would tell you to drink Pedialyte? That's for kids or injured people. And I'm like, ugh. So I had this horrible, gurky, icky feeling the whole dive. So when I got out, I was trembly, I was tired, I could barely move, and I only had 3 minutes to get into the chamber, or my blood was going to fizz like a Coca-Cola, and I was going to die a horrible, grisly death. Yeah. So basically, from 40 feet to the surface, 30 feet per minute, get out of the sub, get out of 2 dry suits, get out of a helmet cam system, take all this other life support system off that I had, and crawl inside there in 3 minutes. It was awesome. It looked like an IndyCar pit stop.
So you said 40 feet was basically your cruising?
Yeah, 40, 50 feet, but I went all the way 100 feet and all the way up to 20 feet. So I was constantly fizzing my blood. So I felt things that I shouldn't ever feel. You know? I felt itchies and stuff. You know?
So you just have is there a webpage that has all these dive profiles and just documents it really well?
The things that I do?
Yeah.
You think I'm going to write that down? You're crazy. I get in trouble. Nobody'd ever insure me if they knew what I really do. Anything? Yes, sir.
So on the squid, is there a forward? They seem to go both ways. Is there
Yeah.
forward or backwards? Or
They can swim forward as fast as they can backwards. And I actually have some wonderful footage. I wish I had more time. I'd love to give you guys a whole squid school, you know. But their hyponome, their funnel, which is right underneath the chin. They don't really have a chin, but it comes out here. They exhale by forcefully expiring and increasing the pressure inside the mantle. And they have this seal around the head that opens up and flaps against it so that the water has to go out through this funnel. And massively strong muscles, 11 times stronger than mammal muscles. They're very strong muscles. And as they're doing this, they're forcing out this water like a fire hose out through the hyponome. And it's muscular. So it can take this hyponome and totally duct it down. So it goes along their belly, out their tail, and just shoot them forward as fast as they can backwards. The only thing is they can only do that for a short period of time because as they're swimming forward, anybody ever been water skiing and then hit the water really fast? You know, if they're swimming forward very fast, the water is going to fill up the mantle, and then they won't be able to get more water inside. You see what I mean? So because it's just flooded with the pressure change. So they won't be able to breathe very long, and they need a lot of oxygen. So they can swim fast very rapidly. They just can't sustain it. But I've seen them just la 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 la, just come lackadaisical around me, and then wham, just fly onto me. Ah! You know. You never underestimate a Humboldt squid, ever. So it'd be a bad day. So, anything else? Good questions? Yes, ma'am.
You talk about the sound underwater of them feeding and whatnot. Do they themselves make any sound?
I don't think so, but that's one of the things that I actually want to start looking at. I want to have a hydrophone that can collect data on a myriad of frequencies so that I can find out if they make sound or if they hear sound. That's been very interesting to me. But no, the chitinous ring teeth and the beak are hard. And so when they're actually grabbing onto something, they dig their hooks into it. And as they pull away, they tear it apart. And it actually sounds like Velcro being ripped apart underwater. It's really quite graphic. They tear things apart. I've seen a 6-foot squid grab onto a 4-foot squid and just totally take its back off like that. And then the sound is really graphic. I mean, the animal's being killed, so it is. But also, when they grab onto my camera, all these ring teeth, it's like dog toenails on a tile floor. You know, and they're like, and they rip it off. It's a pretty impressive sound, actually. I'm like, oh, I'm glad that wasn't me. You know, take the camera. You know, I have scratches all over my old cameras. Now I got anodized aluminum, and this scratch is easy. But the old car paint on the old resin housings, you see all these little grooves all over from all the squid attacks. It's pretty fun stuff. So, any others? Yes, sir.
Sorry, last question.
Yeah.
The stomachs of squids, do they have gizzards? Do they have some mechanism that makes it possible for them to digest different types of food in different environments, or do they just chew it using their wing teeth first and then just sort of push it through their intestines?
That's an amazing question, and they have a rather fantastic system to give you a good answer. When they bite on, their mouth starts at the arms. When they grab on, that actually becomes an extension of the degradation system. So they grab onto you with these massive arms, and then they can take that beak and move it all over the place. It's completely, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's completely mobile. It can change all the different directions. So it takes a bite, and it can incise the bite just like a 2 pair of trauma shears intersecting, and it cuts very effectively. It can cut through bone. Mind you, it's polysaccharide. It's not much different than the nail right here. Not the same material, but very similar flexibility. But because of that, it condenses and moves around. It's flexible and shaves out the least path, the least resistance path. It can shave off, go right through a tuna skull. Anybody ever seen a tuna skull? It's like this. So you just chomp right through it. And then the radula, that gold crown tongue, grabs onto it and peristaltically moves it right into the crop where it holds on, and then it takes another bite. So it can take a bite every 3 seconds, and a 6-foot squid takes a bite the size of a man's fist, about an orange. So an orange-sized bite every 3 seconds. And so the radula deposits into the crop, and as soon as there's enough, like 3 bite sizes right there, the pyloric sphincter opens up, gastric sphincter clamps up, and it peristaltically moves it right into the gut, which is extremely acidic and breaks it down fast. It starts to break down food right away, independent of stress. Because I'll tell you why I say that. I'm filming a whole bunch of squid all around me, and they explode out of view, and I see a pilot whale coming up through there, and it sees me and corrals away, and all the squid are going by me, fleeing their predator, right? Because pilot squid eat Humboldt squid. Well, while this one squid was fleeing up here, getting away from the pilot whale, he sees this lone sardine, turns, grabs it, and continues to run. Now, how many gazelle would try to eat grass when the lion's trying to chase them down? I mean, that's an amazing ability to eat while under stress. So I think that everything works no matter what their stress level. They're always looking, evade predators, eat. Or sometimes they're the same, parallel. But their ability to eat is staggering. They're always hungry. They're always hungry. So yeah, I've seen them do some amazing things. I've actually filmed them eating krill. Clouds of krill that were so thick that I couldn't see my fingertips at all. The camera is literally a blanket of life of little krill bodies against the lens. And I would swim away, and as I was swimming away to let the krill get away so I could find an open cloud, you can see these big Humboldt squid, just ghostly white shapes going through the cloud and grabbing the krill like a baleen feeding whale, and just like eat them like raisinets. They're like, chomp, chomp, chomp. And then they go around, they swim and grab some more. It's very ballet, very beautiful. And I've also seen them eat animals bigger than themselves. So we had a thresher shark on a hook, and I jumped in the water to film the thresher shark because they're rare animals. And yeah, it's on a hook, but I want to get some footage of it. And we released it anyway. And as I'm filming it, this thresher shark, or this Humboldt squid, 5-foot Humboldt squid, this is a 14-foot shark. And this 5-foot squid comes out of nowhere, out of the bottom, grabs onto the animal right in front of the gills, takes an orange-sized bite out of it, and takes off. And first of all, this was a female thresher shark. Anybody know about female head skin thickness? It's 3 times thicker than a male because the males bite onto the females to grab them and lock them in place while they mate. And this squid bit through it like it was no problem. And that was skin that thick. So yeah, they'll eat animals bigger than themselves. Like I said, they're very opportunistic predators. So what do we have in California? A bunch of squid hanging out underneath surfers. Something cool is going to happen soon. I was actually interviewed a guy for the last show I did with Discovery Channel. I found a guy in Long Beach, California, who was attacked by Humboldt squid spearfishing around those oil rigs. He just had to fight them off and crawl back to the boat and give them his food. His fish that he shot. So they're here. Sounds like some horror movie, doesn't it? So, anything else? Yes, ma'am.
When does your next documentary air?
There's one airing right now. I was trying to find a giant octopus, which I have some ideas on where they're hanging out, but they sent me to the places they could afford, the wrong places. So it's on Monster Quest. It's called Giant Octopus, and it's airing right now, and I haven't seen it yet. But I hear it's kind of fun because me and my buddy had a good time knowing we weren't going to find giant octopus. We just got giant octopus, not colossal octopus. So that was great fun. So it's airing right now on the History Channel. I have 11 other documentaries that are out. If you, oh my God, I've always said this before, but I've never had it with such gravity. But if you Google my name, you'll actually see all the stuff that I've done. I've never said it. That's so cool. I'm saying it to Google. That is fun. So, anything else? Well, if you guys ever want to have another giant squid lecture or more sub stuff, you know where I'm at. I'd be more than happy to come out and talk to you guys about it. The sub's going in the water on October 30th, and that's our christening ceremony. And we're doing a whole bunch of stuff in November, sea trialing the sub, and including the Lake Tahoe transect will probably be done shortly after that. So if you guys are interested, you know, I'll be happy to give you guys a report back. Underseavoyager.org is our website, underseavoyager.org. Because I'm a nonprofit, so I can claim org, right? Huh?
It's under construction right now.
Oh, okay. So anything else? Guys, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.